Carl Jung once said, "The heaviest burden a child must carry is the unlived life of the parent." But today, that burden has shifted. It's now carried by modern men. We drag behind us the unspoken regrets, the emotional debris, and the spiritual blindness of past generations. Men who never dared to confront one of the most unsettling truths of all: the hidden power women hold over the unconscious male psyche. Here's what Jung saw with unnerving clarity. What most men will spend a lifetime avoiding. You don't actually see the women you love. You see projections, fragments of your own soul dressed up in someone else's body. And what you so desperately call love? It's often just projection, pure intoxicating illusion. This isn't a war on women, it's a wake-up call. A spotlight on the invisible psychic forces that shape how you fall in love, why you fall apart, and why you keep chasing emotional ghosts disguised as feminine salvation. Until you become aware of these patterns, you'll remain entangled, believing you chose her, when in reality, you were only ever chasing a piece of yourself. Jung believed that deep within every man lives a mysterious archetype, the Anima, his inner feminine. She is the voice of intuition, the current of emotion, the pulse of soul. But here's the danger. If you never acknowledge her, she doesn't vanish, she takes over. And worse, she projects herself onto women around you. You don't see them for who they are. You see them as you need them to be. That's why a beautiful stranger can feel like home. Why you feel seen within minutes. Why you call it fate when really it's possession. Jung called it psychic takeover. You're not falling in love with her. You're plunging headfirst into your own unconscious. The Anima whispers seductively, "She's different. She'll fix you. She completes you." But it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not about her. It never was. You're just chasing the part of your soul that you abandoned long ago, now projected onto someone else's body. The Anima isn't malicious, but she's powerful. She holds the key to your soul's depth, and if left unrecognized, she doesn't knock politely. She drags you through chaos until you finally listen. Every obsession that leaves you sleepless, every heartbreak that feels like hell, every woman you put on a pedestal, those are her fingerprints. Jung issued a chilling warning. If you don't consciously work with the Anima, she becomes autonomous. She begins to live outside you, seducing, misleading, commanding. You start chasing fantasies with faces. You follow her voice like a soldier follows orders. You burn in love, not because of her, but because you're fractured inside. It's not beauty that consumes you, it's your own inner chaos demanding resolution. Healing doesn't begin with rejection, it starts with recognition. When you stop looking for her out there and begin speaking directly to the Anima within, something fundamental shifts. You stop scanning the world for someone to save you and begin the descent into your own depths. That descent is the turning point. It's when a man transforms from someone who is consumed by love to someone who chooses it, with clarity, with agency, with soul. Until then, love is just a puppet show, and you're tangled in the strings. You don't need chains to control a man, just let him fall in love with his own fantasy. Most men today are emotionally starving. They were raised by absent fathers, distracted mothers, or both. They weren't taught sovereignty, they were taught submission. They were conditioned to seek approval, especially from women, and told that pleasing others is masculinity. So when he meets a seductive woman, he doesn't feel caution, he feels destiny. He doesn't recognize the trap, he kneels before it. But behind her allure often lies a cycle of manipulation. She gives him just enough attention to keep him addicted, then pulls it away. She rewards his compliance, but punishes his independence. She becomes his mirror, and when she retreats, he shatters. That's not love, it's a psychic snare. But the unconscious man will swear it's passion. And here's the twist, she doesn't even have to scheme, she doesn't have to be a villain. He manipulates himself. He volunteers his strength in exchange for approval. He silences his truth just to be touched. He trades his essence for attention. And every time he gives a piece of himself away to win her gaze, she loses respect for him. Not because she's cruel, but because she intuitively senses that he doesn't own himself. Jung didn't see this pattern as evil. He saw it as inevitable. It's what happens when a man hasn't completed the journey of individuation. He's still fragmented. He hasn't faced his shadow. He hasn't claimed his wholeness. So he searches for it in the body of a woman. But she isn't the answer. She's a symbol. Her presence isn't the real danger, it's what she represents. She becomes the gateway to purpose, to meaning, to transcendence, and that makes her far too powerful. Once she realizes this, she doesn't have to seduce. Her silence alone can torture him. Her validation feels like heroin. Her absence, pure devastation. He's not in love. He's in servitude to the broken parts of his soul. Jung never romanticized the feminine. He revered its power, but only when it was understood, engaged consciously, and never projected blindly. Because the unconscious feminine has two faces, the nurturing muse and the devouring seductress. One breathes life into you, the other consumes it. The unconscious feminine isn't just myth or metaphor. It's a psychic force with teeth. And if a man doesn't integrate her within, she shapes his reality without. Every obsession, every toxic spiral, every woman he can't forget, it's not about her. It's about the anima, trying to get his attention through chaos. She doesn't whisper forever. If ignored, she shouts. Most men pedestalize women not because of who they are, but because of what they represent: salvation, purpose, soul. When you're unconscious, you don't love her. You need her to save you. And she becomes less of a person, more of a symbol. That's not romance. That's possession. When you meet a woman and feel like she completes you, it's rarely divine connection. It's usually psychic fragmentation. Your anima wants to be seen, but you hand her over to someone else's body. That's when obsession kicks in. That's when you confuse emotional intensity for fate. But it isn't fate. It's projection. You're chasing yourself, and you're losing. The anima becomes a siren. She doesn't need to scream. She seduces through absence. She haunts your mind, not because you love her, but because you've lost you. And until you reclaim her within, you'll keep repeating the same story. Meet, fall, suffer, collapse. She doesn't destroy you. Your unconscious allegiance to illusion does. To break the spell, you must stop looking for the sacred in someone else's skin. You must descend, alone. You must confront the void you've avoided by falling into women who feel like medicine but act like mirrors. Only then can you truly choose love, rather than surrender to it like a prisoner. And here's the paradox. The more desperate you are for her love, the less she respects you. The more you mold yourself to earn her attention, the more invisible you become. This isn't cruelty. It's instinct. A woman cannot admire a man who doesn't own himself. Men today aren't weak. They're unclaimed. They have fire, but no container. Hunger, but no direction. So they look to women for confirmation. Am I enough? Do you see me? Will you complete me? And she may play along. She may validate him, even love him. But she won't surrender to him. Why? Because she knows, consciously or not, that he's orbiting her gravity, not standing in his own. The more he seeks approval, the more she tests. She offers warmth, then coldness. Praise, then criticism. She becomes the weather, and he the beggar for sunshine. It's not always manipulative, it's archetypal. She's responding to his lack of center. This isn't just about women. It's about what they reflect. Because a man without initiation will look to romance for meaning, and every relationship becomes a spiritual battleground he doesn't understand. Jung warned of this. If you haven't done the inner work, she becomes the battlefield. You don't see her as she is, you see her as your unconscious canvas, and she'll sense that pressure. She'll feel your need, your hunger, your hidden agenda to be saved. And even if she doesn't understand it, she'll recoil. And here's the irony. She doesn't want to fix you. She wants to feel your presence. But you're so focused on being chosen, so busy being good enough, that you disappear. She can't surrender to a ghost. The more you chase, the more she pulls back. The more you give up your fire for her warmth, the more she freezes. And when you set boundaries, she tests them. When you assert strength, she vanishes. But when you abandon yourself for her approval, she cries for more. You think she's inconsistent, but she's just reacting to your lack of sovereignty. This dynamic isn't unique. It's a pattern, a looping nightmare disguised as love. And it begins early. The absent mother, the unpredictable female teacher, the first love who couldn't love you back. You think it's behind you, but your unconscious remembers. So you find her again, in a new face, with a new name. But the emotional blueprint is identical, hot and cold, affectionate, then distant. She awakens the wound you never healed, and calls it chemistry. You're not broken. You're uninitiated. You weren't shown how to hold your center when the feminine pulls. So you mistake intensity for intimacy. You crave the pain because your nervous system calls it home. This is trauma reenactment, not love. The problem isn't that women hurt you. It's that your psyche repeats what it hasn't repaired. You're not just unlucky, you're unconscious. And the more you seek a different outcome with the same emotional blueprint, the deeper the wound becomes. Until you stop asking, why is she like this? And start asking, why am I drawn to it? Nothing changes. When you realize that every obsession is a mirror, not a mystery, everything shifts. She stops being your captor and becomes your teacher. Not because she changes, but because you finally see clearly. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole, and it begins when you reclaim the anima within rather than worship it outside. You don't need another lesson disguised as heartbreak. You need to face your own shadow, the part of you that still believes pain is love and love is rescue. Because until you do, the feminine will keep arriving in your life not to complete you, but to confront you. The anima-driven man is emotionally volatile, easily enchanted, and spiritually hollow. He confuses intensity with intimacy, submission with connection, and loss with meaning. He calls his pain devotion. He calls his collapse love. But what Jung saw was something far more primal. Archetypal possession. A man gripped by his anima is no longer sovereign. He is acted upon. He doesn't lead. He follows. He doesn't choose. He adapts. He doesn't embody. He performs. And deep down, he hopes every performance earns him what he never learned to give himself: worth. Women don't respect this man. They may use him, admire his sensitivity, or even keep him close. But they will never surrender to him. Because how can she trust a man ruled by her image? A man who orbits her approval instead of standing in his truth? This isn't weakness. This is disorientation. The fire inside him has no channel. The masculine energy meant to build, protect, and lead is redirected toward pleasing, hoping, sacrificing. He becomes addicted to emotional highs and destroyed by emotional withdrawal. And every time it happens, he thinks, this is love. It's not, it's dependency. He believes that if he just loves harder, she'll finally see him. If he sacrifices more, she'll stay. If he softens enough, she'll open. But the truth is brutal. The more he gives away his power, the less she sees him as a man. Not because she's cruel, but because nature doesn't surrender to confusion. This is the uninitiated masculine. A man chasing transcendence in the form of a woman, hoping romance will redeem him. That being chosen will silence the storm inside. But no woman can carry the weight of a man's unlived soul. And when he makes her the container for it, she breaks or flees. Jung understood this pattern well. When men are denied rites of passage, they seek them through the feminine. But a woman can't initiate you. She can only reflect whether you've done the work. And when you haven't, you keep mistaking chemistry for destiny. You keep confusing the chaos for passion. You think she's not like the others, even as your soul already knows the ending. She becomes your muse, your fix, your god. But she's just a mirror, and mirrors crack under the weight of projection. The truth is, you were never dating her. You were dating your missing self. And the psyche keeps circling back to unfinished business. That's why you keep attracting women with the same pattern: emotionally erratic, withholding, dominant, unavailable. One moment warm, the next cold. She praises your vulnerability, but recoils at your strength. She responds to your boundaries with punishment, but collapses when you detach. It's not about her. It's about the wound she triggers. The part of you that still believes love must be earned through sacrifice. The part that sees unpredictability as passion. The part that confuses control for care. And so, without knowing it, you keep recreating the pain. Not because you're broken, but because your soul is trying to heal. You don't feel drawn to healthy women because your unconscious doesn't recognize peace as love. It was trained to equate chaos with intimacy. Until you break that loop, you will continue re-entering the same emotional theater, playing opposite different faces. You'll keep swearing, "This time it's different," while your shadow smirks in silence. This isn't bad luck, it's a failed initiation. The relationships weren't meant to fix you. They were meant to break you open, to show you what you refuse to face, the pain of being unclaimed, the ache of never learning how to hold yourself, the longing to be seen, healed, and chosen, without having to betray your center. The feminine you're so magnetized by is rarely a soulmate. She's your unresolved trauma in disguise. She's the mother who couldn't hold space, the girl who disappeared, the first heartbreak you never integrated. And no matter how much makeup she wears, your unconscious knows the pattern. You chase her not because she's the one, but because she holds the key to a pain you haven't unlocked. She awakens your old wound, and for a moment, you feel alive. But it's not love, it's reenactment. The psyche repeats what it hasn't healed. It doesn't care about logic or timelines. It only cares about integration. And it will keep bringing you back to the same lesson until you finally learn. This isn't about her. It's about you. So the next time you feel that magnetic pull, the rush, the obsession, the thrill, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me is starving? What story am I reliving? What illusion am I still chasing? When you stop asking, why do they keep hurting me? And start asking, what part of me keeps choosing pain? Everything changes. You stop being the victim of romance and become the author of your healing. This is the essence of shadow work, not fixing the feminine, but integrating the parts of yourself you keep casting onto her. Your chaos? Own it. Your longing? Explore it. Your heartbreak? Let it initiate you. Jung's message was never, avoid women. It was this, face yourself so fully, so honestly, that no woman can ever steal your soul again. The woman was never the answer. She was the trigger. And once you realize that, the spell breaks, the grief begins, and so does the work. To become whole, a man must reclaim what he keeps outsourcing, his soul. And until he does, every woman he meets will become another reflection of the work he refuses to do. Modern men chase potential. They confuse chemistry with compatibility, lust with love, and projection with destiny. They fall for symbols, not people. And when the fantasy collapses, they blame her, not their illusion. But Jung was clear. Projection is always unconscious. You don't choose it, it hijacks you. And because it feels sacred, so intense, so magnetic, you swear it's real. But it's not connection, it's compensation. You're assigning your missing pieces to someone else and hoping they'll hold them for you. That's why certain women feel magical. Not because they possess something divine, but because they reflect the divinity you disowned in yourself. You don't see her. You see the parts of you you're too afraid to claim. And when she leaves, it feels like death. Because you weren't grieving her, you were grieving you. You didn't fall in love, you fell into projection. The Anima inflates her into a goddess, a healer, a muse. You believe she's the one, but she's just human. And the moment she shows it, the illusion shatters. And so do you. This is the price of living unconsciously. Your unlived life becomes a trap disguised as romance. You don't need another heartbreak. You need to stop mistaking pain for passion. Stop calling the wound love. Stop chasing someone to fix what only you can face. Because here's the truth. The feminine isn't here to complete you. She's here to confront you, to reflect what you haven't yet integrated. That's why it always hurts. Not because she's cruel, but because your psyche is screaming to be reclaimed. And it will keep screaming until you listen. You've met the same woman over and over, different names, same energy, cold, chaotic, demanding. She rewards your weakness, punishes your strength. She wants control, but cries for leadership. She mocks your needs, but withers without your presence. This is not a person. This is an archetype, and she will haunt you until you stop playing out the same script. Why do you keep attracting this? Because you're still not initiated. You're still searching for mother in a lover, still asking to be chosen instead of choosing yourself. You can memorize red flags, quote podcasts, study female psychology, but until you face your own unconscious, nothing changes. And here's what no dating coach will tell you. She's not the problem. You are. Not because you're flawed, but because you're fragmented. You keep giving away your center and calling it romance. You keep collapsing in her absence and calling it love. You keep orbiting her validation and calling it connection. You don't need a better strategy. You need to wake up. The anima must be brought home. Not worshipped, not chased, not suppressed, integrated. Only then can a man walk the world unshaken. Not because he's emotionless, but because his emotions no longer own him. This is sovereignty. A man who's done the work is no longer moved by seduction. He sees through manipulation. He doesn't flinch when she pulls away. He doesn't beg for closeness. He chooses it, with clarity. And if it's not offered freely, he walks. Not because he's heartless, but because he values his soul too much to rent it for attention. Most women have never met a man like this. A man who doesn't chase, who doesn't adapt, who doesn't perform, who simply is, present, grounded, whole. And to a woman still ruled by her unconscious animus, he will feel cold, intimidating, even cruel. Why? Because he doesn't play the roles. He doesn't rescue, doesn't submit, doesn't validate her shadows. He holds his line, and by doing so, he shatters her fantasy. He becomes dangerous, not because he harms, but because he can't be used. His worth is non-negotiable. His attention is earned. His soul is his own. This is integration. The anima no longer runs the show. She no longer possesses or seduces from the shadows. She becomes an inner compass, not an outer obsession. And when this happens, something radical shifts. He no longer seeks love to feel alive. He brings life into love. Now the entire dynamic flips. He doesn't impress women. He awakens them. He doesn't need to chase. His stillness becomes a test. If she's indifferent, he knows she can't meet him at depth. If she recoils, he knows he's touched something sacred. This is the man the feminine can finally trust. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real. His presence is stable. His emotions are honest. His love is a choice, not a wound in disguise. And for the first time, the relationship becomes real, not projection, not performance, real. Because he no longer needs her to be the source of his wholeness. He found that in himself. This is the essence of Jung's dark truth. She was never the answer. She was the mirror. And once you see that clearly, the spell breaks, the fantasy dissolves, and grief comes flooding in. You realize you weren't chasing love, you were avoiding yourself. But that's where the man is born, in that grief, in that collapse, in that silence. Not the man society rewards, not the one women fantasize about, but the man who walks through life with clarity, because he no longer seeks himself in someone else's eyes. He's found what he was looking for all along, in his own reflection.